Okay, let's start with a number. 126,295,331,000,000. It's a staggering 14-digit figure, and what it actually represents is the combined financial weight of the entire world. That is the International Monetary Fund's projected total global gross domestic product for the year 2026.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're on a mission to decode the actual numbers that define global wealth. You know, we hear the word trillions thrown around in the news constantly, right? But mapping this data out reveals the true balance of geopolitical power. We're drawing directly from the latest data and projections compiled by the IMF, the World Bank, and the United Nations to understand where the world's money is genuinely concentrated.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, understanding gross domestic product. 2, nominal versus purchasing power. 3, the trillion-dollar club. 4, history of economic shifts. And finally, 5, regional economic powerhouses.
Section 1. Understanding gross domestic product.
So before we can get into those massive numbers, we need to set the foundational rules. Gross domestic product, or GDP, is simply the market value of all final goods and services from a nation in a given year. Honestly, just think of it like a giant financial receipt for a country. If you add up the value of literally every car manufactured, every single haircut given, every software subscription sold, and every medical consultation provided within a country's borders over a single year, that grand total, that's your GDP. Understanding this one single metric is absolutely crucial because it's the baseline for measuring global influence.
Section 2. Nominal versus purchasing power.
We really need to clarify the specific lens we're using today. We're focusing on nominal GDP, which calculates a country's output using current market exchange rates. Now, while this gives us the absolute market value on the global stage, it is vulnerable to currency fluctuations and it completely ignores local costs. Purchasing power parity, or PPP, on the other hand, adjusts for the differences in the cost of living and standard of living between countries. But for our journey today, we are tracking raw, unadjusted global market power.
All right, Section 3, the trillion-dollar club. This is what we've been waiting for. Looking at the top 5 economies across the IMF, the World Bank, and the United Nations, there is an absolute lockstep consensus in the hierarchy. The United States sits firmly in first place, projected by the IMF to hit over $32 trillion. China follows right behind in second at nearly $21 trillion. Then we have Germany, Japan, and the United Kingdom rounding out the top 5. It is incredibly rare for these 3 major financial institutions to agree so perfectly across all their complex models. And that tells us this current hierarchy is deeply, deeply entrenched.
But the gap between the top 3 is literally staggering. The US at $32.3 trillion and China at $20.8 trillion are just in a stratosphere of their own. They are the true economic superpowers right now. The drop-off down to Germany in third place at $5.4 trillion highlights exactly how heavily concentrated global market value is at the absolute top.
Section 4. History of economic shifts.
Now, you might be wondering, has it always been this way? Well, no. This hierarchy isn't static. It's a dynamic, ever-changing landscape. Back in 1916, the United States officially overtook the British Empire as the world's largest economy. In the post-World War II period, Japan's massive economic miracle catapulted them all the way to second place by the 1970s. But then, following those sweeping 1978 market reforms, China began this massive ascent, ultimately dethroning Japan in 2010. These historic milestones prove that long-term global power naturally shifts over the decades.
Section 5. Regional economic powerhouses.
Let's zoom out a bit. When we break down that giant $126 trillion pie, advanced economies hold a staggering $73.8 trillion. In contrast, all of the emerging market and developing economies combined account for $52.4 trillion. And here's a really interesting takeaway. If the European Union were treated as a single country, its $23 trillion combined weight would place it comfortably in second place globally, right between the US and China. This shows us exactly why regional trade blocs and geopolitical alliances are absolutely vital to global influence.
Scaling the global economy from trillions to millions.
Before we wrap this up, we need to do a striking micro-contrast. We spent a lot of time talking about trillions, but let's swing to the absolute other end of the spectrum, the world's smallest sovereign economies. We have Nauru, Montserrat, and Tuvalu, with Tuvalu coming in at just $65 million. To put that crazy scale into perspective for a second, the United States economy is nearly 500,000 times larger than Tuvalu's. The disparity in scale across our globe is just almost difficult to even comprehend.
So what does this all mean for us going forward? With ongoing currency fluctuations and really aggressive growth in emerging markets, how is this global economic leaderboard going to shift by the next decade? Who's going to rise, who will fall, and what completely new superpowers might emerge? Definitely keep an eye on the numbers, because the map of the global economy is always being redrawn. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.